IBTC. Wonuola, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rotus.
You can also send messages to WhatsApp 0809-444-0981.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, Wonuola, lots to get into with regards to the fixed income money market space. I'll have to admit, I use Twitter to follow what's been going on the T-bills. Analysts will post the results, and everybody starts talking about it. Since the ban, I've struggled. Where can Nigerians follow T-bill auction results? Is it on the CBN's website or DMO?
I don't think you can get it on either site, right? And again, CBN basically blasts the results to the bank, so they send it through to every bank, and then from the banks, we then send it to all our clients. So from like a Stanbic, we blast it across all our branches, and we send it to our clients as well. So yeah, it's not like the DMO. It's not like the bond auctions where the DMO pretty much publishes the rates.
Fantastic. All right, thank you so much. So you guys out there, keep up with Stanbic in order to get ahead of results. And in fact, it was Wonuola that sent me these results from yesterday. So Wonuola, we're looking at this NTB results here. How do you interpret the huge oversubscription for the 91-day and 364-day bills? Is that investor appetite, or how do you see it?
Yeah, so yesterday we had the option where the 91 days, 2.5 billion was offered, and on the 182 days as well, we saw about 1.1. We saw about 1.7 billion offered there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then on the 1 year, we had about 3.614 billion offered. So like you rightly said, the auction was oversubscribed by 15 billion. The 1 year basically came out stronger than we expected. If you look at the previous auction, the stop price there was 9.64 on the 1 year, while this one was 9.4. So you saw that compression, and the main reason is because, like you rightly said, it was oversubscribed. Market had expected that the DMO was going to sell way more than the additional 15 billion they sold. So if you look at the previous auctions, for instance, they had sold about 87 billion more than what was offered. But in this auction, market expected more sale, but that didn't happen, and that's why you basically have a compression in yields there.
Good stuff. As far as the allotments, is that affected by the subscription? So is there okay? So in this case now, they ended up at 14.5 billion was what was offered. They ended up allotting more. Is there usually room to allot more based on subscription, based on the amount of subscription received?
Well, it's really likely at the question of the demo, right? Like I mentioned, last auction, which was last week actually, they offered 87 billion more than, they sold 87 billion more than what was basically offered. And I like to look at it from, the borrowing plan of the government, right? So if you look at the local borrowing plan for this year, it's about 2.3 trillion naira. So far, they've done about 1.34 trillion. Right, and that's because they've done additional sales in the T-bills, additional sales in the bonds, and sales to non-competitive bids as well in the bonds. So if you look at that, they have roughly about 970 billion to go. Although you would also see that, like about 2 weeks ago, the Ministry of Finance also submitted a supplementary budget. So they're looking to borrow about $2 billion as well extra. They had indicated that they might do it for local borrowing. So if you add that to what is left, you still have about 1.8 trillion left. If you look at how many months left in the year, about like for the bond auctions, about like 7 more auctions, although you still have more auctions on the T-bill. So, it's really likely dependent on DMO's appetite to borrow more, in order to basically address the deficit in the budget.
Great stuff. So for our listeners, for those who want to participate, and I guess you can go through Stanbic to participate at least at the secondary level, for the fact that the government wants to possibly offer more, you mentioned this supplement. Every time we have you on, I always take notes. See my pen. Every time. So is there an opportunity for, I guess, investors to participate if the federal government is going to be offering more then?
Yes, definitely. I mean, for retail clients, they can come to Stanbic, go into any of our branches, just walk in. As long as you have an account, it's easy for you to just participate, in this auction. So if you really break it down in terms of people that participate, so you see that retail investors are typically more on the 91-day investment, and then you see more asset managers and PFAs on 182 and 1 year auction. Because for them, longer tenors, it's really much better. So if you look at those money market funds, they typically put in their money on the 1 year auction, and that's why you see the subscription there is pretty large. I mean, about 264 billion for the last auction.
Fantastic. What about these stop rates? Have they changed much? You may have mentioned that earlier, though, but have they changed much since the prior auction?
The 91 days and 182 days remain constant. However, the 1 year closed about 24 basis points tighter. So last auction closed at 9.64, and this is closing at 9.4.
Okay, fantastic. So how would you then describe the yield trajectory for these rates? Would you then say the 91 day and 182 are pretty much static, and the only movement we're seeing is on the 364? Or I guess if we go start from the beginning of the year, the rates have trended up a bit, have they not? Well, what's the yield story for T-bills?
Yeah, I mean, so rates have pretty much trended up. I mean, we came from last year where rates were pretty much at very, very low yields. I mean, T-bills were at 0.2%, unlike on the 91 day. 1 year was just basically abysmal as well. So we've seen quite a massive move in yield, since January. Again, that has basically, been on the backdrop of, everybody expecting the government to borrow more this year. We see people basically, keeping money on the short dates, and then when these options come, they bid higher, and because government had appetite to borrow more. I mean, we start seeing huge trend. But I mean, going forward from this auction, we expect a bit of moderation today, and the reason being, I mean, if you see what was put in subscription versus what was sold, I mean, there'll be a lot of bids looking to buy securities. Again, another thing to mention is, I mean, the supply hasn't been really that great this year. Typically for banks typically could participate in the OMO auctions, but there we don't really see much happening. I mean, we still see auctions every week, but the amounts offered there and amounts sold there, aren't great. So because of the paucity and supply of securities, you probably see more people continue to pile into this, especially for the money market fund, because those are guided by the kind of tenor you could invest in. So obviously on the short term, I expect yields will moderate on the T-bills. Again, going into next month as well, we have over $1 trillion coming in Naira liquidity. Definitely that would also filter in here as well. So I think in the short term, basically we see moderation in yields. But going into the third quarter, fourth quarter, if I mean the government remains aggressive in local borrowing and at issuing more, then you start seeing a trend wider.
Fantastic. Can we quickly, if you want to put up the bond, bond auction, the upcoming bond auction, the circular from the DMO. Would love to get Wonuola's thoughts there. I guess Wonuola, we have a few minutes left. What can you tell us about this circular from the DMO with respect to the, I guess it's next week, Wednesday? The next week, Wednesday, is a bond auction.
Correct, yes. We have a bond auction coming in next week. As you can see, we have 50 billion offered across the 2027s, the 2035s, and the 2050s. Again, if you look at the last stop rates there, I mean, they closed 27s, basically closed at 13.1, and while the 25s closed at 14, and the 49s closed at, I mean, the 50s closed at 14.2. So, I mean, government also sold about 24.9 billion more to the public there. So we expect the same trend here as well. We expect this to be overly subscribed. We expect the government to offer more than, to sell more than what is offered here. In terms of rates, we expect them to close lower than the previous auction, because if you look at the secondary market rates in the bonds, they've pretty much compressed, an average of about 40 basis points from the last auction. So in terms of our guidance on the 7th, we'll probably on the 2035, we'll probably see rates close between 30.7 and 30.9, and on the 50s between 30.8 to 14. So we'll probably see rates trend lower than the previous auction there.
Great stuff. Can you quickly touch on inflation and how that impacts what we've seen? Because inflation came in at 17.93, moderated a bit, but how does that play in for, I guess, bonds and T-bills?
Yeah, I mean, we saw that play a bit. I'm not really too bullish around how inflation affects the market. Although when inflation printed, yesterday, we saw yields over 2 days ago. We saw yields basically moderate at yesterday's trading. Again, a lot of investors are thinking, okay, have we, as inflation now peaked? Because obviously we're coming from a very high base effect, and if inflation has peaked, then the trajectory is for it to basically moderate going forward. And if that's the case, then the negative yield basically also compresses. Yes, you see that feeding, but I don't think it's like a major play here, because ultimately the interest rate market is more driven by Naira liquidity. And if you look at the cyclical flows that have been coming into the Naira market, I'll just quickly touch on that. You see that the overnight markets have been very, very short. I mean, the market is short about over 200 billion, which then means that banks have to borrow from the central bank in order to fund their daily obligations. So we've seen overnight rates elevated around 14 to 15%. And in the same vein, banks are now able to offer fixed deposits to the likes of PFAs and asset managers. So because they're offering rates as high as 14, 15%, then you see that those PFAs would rather just put in money on the fixed deposit, and wait till you start trending up on the other side, like on the bond auctions and on the treasury bill auctions. So, and the reason why we have rates we have a liquidity squeeze in the overnight market, because CBN has actually been doing excess reserving, above what they guide on at their MPC meeting. So excess reserving across the industry has just been, it's been massive, and that has basically elevated rates. So like next month as well, we expect over $1 trillion coming in. And the CBN has also indicated from their last MPC as well that they will continue this excess reserving. And if that still goes on, it basically just keeps rates elevated. So it's really more of a liquidity play than inflation.
All right.
Wonuola, we've run over time, but it's all so informative having you on. Thank you, Val. I'm so sorry.
Just to lump 4 questions or 4 messages into one. People are trying to find out if they can now invest. Individuals can now invest in T-bills, and if those earning in Naira can invest in Euro bonds and all those other foreign bonds and portfolios.
Very quickly, Wonuola.
Okay, yeah. So quickly, yes, you can invest in T-bills with your Naira. You can walk into any of Stanbic branches. I think minimum is about 100,000 Naira, so you can easily do that. With regards using Naira to invest in Euro bonds, unfortunately, you can't anymore because it's part of the items excluded from FX. So you can't use Naira to buy dollars for foreign investment. You have to use your own resource to invest, your own dollar resource to invest in Euro bonds.
Thank you so much.
Wonuola Akanbi, Head of Financial Institution Sales for Global Markets at Stanbic. You're awesome. Thank you so much. Val, thank you so much. And thanks for the messages as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. A special thanks to Otunuga Sunday, TBX, Ahmed, Ben, Benga, Ugo. Thank you for all your messages. And Wonu, thank you so much. And Rotus, have a